Hello and welcome to NARC Live on Wednesday the 16th of September, coming to you from Norfolk on the east coast of England with Tammy M0TC.
Hello, and David G7URP.
And you're very welcome. Good to see you. On the show tonight, we meet Martin G4HKS. You ask the questions to the man behind Martin Lynch & Sons. Lots of your suggestions on how to keep pigeons off your antenna. And we find out who works from a shack like this. But first, a few notices for you. And James M0ZAH says, please could you announce this on the NARC Live this Wednesday? Tony G0MQG and myself will be trialling a 10-metre net every Sunday at 1600 on USB, 28.550 megahertz, plus or minus QRM, at 4 o'clock every Sunday. The aim is to try and increase the local 10-metre activity. So if you've got 10-metre facilities and you'd like to give that a try, join James and Tony every Sunday at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And Tony2E0NLK says, please could you announce on NARC Live that I'm looking for a 3-element 6-metre beam. If anyone has one going that they no longer need. Thank you very much for your help. I've got Nigel's email address here, but rather than you try and take that down now, I think the best way is for you to drop us a line to our usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com, and we'll certainly pass on your messages to Nigel if you've got a 3-element 6-metre beam that you can let him have. Now, sometimes we announce little things like that and we get very little response, which is understandable. But this one is not like that. In fact, we've got a couple of pages of responses for you on this. So this is what started it all last week. John G4PFZ said, I'd be interested to hear of any ideas to keep pigeons off the HF beam. 2 large ones perched on one of the elements today and managed to move it so it no longer lines up with the other elements. It seems the birds all love to perch on it. I've seen one suggestion of tying cable ties and leaving the tails facing upwards. But has anyone else got any sensible ideas? So we posed this a couple of weeks ago and we got loads of good responses. So here we go. This is the first one. This comes from Alan G4ENS. Thanks to all of you, by the way, who responded to this. Greetings, John. I've had problems with pigeon poop on my motorhome for a long time. When living in Suffolk, I would clap my hands. I can see our guest laughing in the corner here. Clap my hands loud and they would fly away. Best done at dusk after they've settled for the night. But after moving to Grantham on the edge of town, I now have to cope with a different breed of pigeon. The town pigeon does not respond to a loud hand clap like the country version, and no guns in town. After moving in, I noticed that my neighbour's TV antenna was a favourite perch, so I needed a remote solution. I bought a green laser pointer, which I aim at their eyes. It's too weak to have any effect on sunlight, but as dusk approaches, they start to twitch their heads and soon fly away. Eventually, they decide that another perch is set to be preferred. Well, needless to say, be very careful with laser pointers, especially pointing them upwards. But anyway, a nice suggestion there from Alan G4ENS. Paul G. Oh, sorry, Tammy, this is over to you. You do the next one. There's so much to read through. It's lovely, isn't it?
Let's have a picture with this one. Okay. Paul G3VPT. I know it's not radio, but I have been busy clearing up after the removal of a potential antenna supporting tree. Whose antenna will the pigeons go on now? We now have more daylight. There you go. I think he's just sitting there waiting for a cup of tea, actually.
Yes. Good to see Paula. Isn't it nice to see people again? You know, we sort of sit and stare into these lenses every Wednesday night, which is lovely to keep in touch with you, but we can't see you. So it's nice when you send us your pictures. Thanks for that. Oh, there's another little note here from Chris G0DWV. He actually left this on Facebook last week. He said a plastic eagle owl worked for him and it even made Radio Broadland News as well. So good from that. Now, this is from Donard M0KRK, and he says, hello, Dave and Tammy. How do you keep pigeons off your antenna? John GPFZ asked, and if you've got any ideas. 2 large ones perched on one of the elements today and managed to move it. So that's what he said. He says that he hasn't really got any suggestions, but sympathy and childhood recollections, because he lived in Dublin in the 1950s and their TV was BBC Band 1 405 line. Remember that? Pirated from the transmitter on Divers Head near Belfast, a distance of nearly 90 miles. We were fortunate that our home, see the picture, and here it is, had a direct line of sight north to the transmitter, but it did need a 4-element Yagi. You can imagine how long this survived when a large herring bull decided to perch on the end of one of the directors. We never did find a solution, but we blessed the day when colour television arrived with UHF antennas and masthead amplifiers. That's from Donald M0KRK.
Okay. Next, we have got Steve M0HET. I shoot them with an air gun. Problem solved.
I'm not quite sure that's something we can endorse. John G0MXN had this. He said, I had a problem with pigeons. My answer was to hang a small kite made in the image of a sparrowhawk from the main boom of my Cushcraft HF beam. It frightened pigeons away. When they got used to that, I modified the idea and I sent you about tubes fitted on the ground planes of a 2-metre collinear to keep the birds off by using tubes made from the clear PVC tube used to siphon wine into bottles when I did home brewing. I cut the tube to size to fit on the elements after liberally coating the elements with a light grease to make sure they rotated when pigeons alighted on them. Cut the tubing along the side to clip over the tubing of the elements. He said that worked for about 4 years before I gave the beam to Spixworth Scouts. I've heard that a healthy smear of light grease on the elements and the boom deters birds. Only problem is that it hardens in sunlight and needs cleaning off and reapplying regularly. I don't know where G4PFZ lives, so my last resort of going out in the garden and firing my 9mm starting pistol in the air may not be an option. Not a problem here as my property backs onto a farm field where people regularly fire 12-bore shotguns, he says. Any suggestion that he might use an air rifle to get rid of them should be discouraged, however. It's strictly against the law for anyone without a gaming licence to shoot wild birds, however much of a nuisance they are, and anyone caught faces a very heavy fine and confiscation of the weapon. Another little tip that John says is one of my sons once fitted a piezoelectric buzzer to the boom of my antenna, operated from a 9-volt battery wired to a Morse key in the shack. When birds landed on the antenna and I saw them, I pressed on the button. A press on the key was enough to frighten them off. That's a new type of Morse, isn't it? It does not solve the problem of them fouling the area below the beam with droppings when nobody is home, though. But there we are. And now this is one of the other devices that John has sent us. It's from pigeon-deterrent.co.uk. So there are lots of devices. In fact, John mentions that there's lots of things on Google. If you look for pigeon roost deterrents and you Google that or another search engine, then you will be able to get some other solutions. We're going to leave the last word, though, to Tammy with Malcolm.
Okay, so this picture is from Malcolm. Malcolm G3PDH says, David, responding to John's point about pigeons on the antenna. This is what I use on my TV antenna to stop them making a mess on the pathways below. These strips of plastic are available commercially, but not sure it helps for a big Yagi. One method to deter them used to be to place a stuffed bird of prey on the boom, but the pigeons nowadays might not fall for that or become complacent. 7-3 Malcolm.
That's great. Thank you ever so much to all those who have responded. I hope, John, you find that very useful for your tips. I'm sure for everybody else as well, it's been good. And in fact, it leads me neatly on. And last week I mentioned about the new Dictionary of Electronics that you could get. And I said, did you have any favourite books? Well, John G0MXN has sent me this. Now, we did mention it a few weeks ago. I'll go up to this camera here and you can have a look. It's called Hints and Kinks for the Radio Amateur. $8. And what date was this one from? I think 12th edition, it says here. So inside, though, there's got lots of, by the way, let's just show you inside. It's got lots of electronic circuits and things. One of the things is that modern electronic circuits, of course, they do use proprietary chips. And whilst they're really clever and sophisticated, the problem is that those chips sometimes become unavailable, whereas a book like this does have old circuits with old traditional transistors and logic gates and things, which you can still get. So it's just a tip for you there. Now, what I really wanted to show you was this, which John did send us before, and it's very relevant to the other John's problem, because there it is, look. Equal lengths of plexiglass tubing and a washer, pressure fits to retain the tubes. That's on the radials of a collinear, I guess, but you could apply that maybe to other antennas. So, I think we've run out of
pigeons
in there, but lots and lots of suggestions for you. So I hope it's been useful to you, John. Now, Tammy, every week we look at some little people. What have you found this week? Okay. What's your favourite?
This is the little people this week. The one I liked, bar of soap. There you go. That's what we all need at the moment, a bar of soap.
See, you speak for yourself. I don't need a bar of soap, do I? Tell me later.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
I think that's pretty cool.
That is. So is this a bar of soap on top of a soap tray?
Yeah.
And there's the address if you want to have a look at more of those.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't forget to let us know what you've been doing. This is the email address you can write to with anything at all that you think will be of interest to both our club members who watch this and lots of other people as well around the world watch this now. So if you've got anything to contribute, drop them a line to this address, radio@dcpmicro.com. We'd love to hear from you. Now, this is the time every week when we've been saying for some months now, there's a big puzzle on our mind because this is when we ask, who works from a shack like this? This is the shack we featured last week. Lots of hints and tips in there, I think. Let's have a look. What's there, Tammy? We've got radio. Well, anyway, we've got a few people have written into this week, so we've got a few people with some ideas.
Yeah, okay.
You kick off.
So we've got Malcolm G3PDH says, he has two guesses. So he said, purely based on the Bengali Spark Morse key. He's put, it's either Chris G4CCX or Les G0DFC. And he's put Morse key plus the ICOM 7100.
Oh, the 700, yes, that's the main radio in the middle there. Okay. Chris G4CCX, though, he says the Bengali Spark straight key and an ICOM 7100. He's going for Les G0DFC as well.
Okay, Ken M0KJW and Shirley G0ZAA say they suspect that the shack belongs to James M0UKS.
And Chris G3XVL says, after some detective work here, what gave it away for him was the Morse keys, the Bengali Spark, as he sold him one a while back, and the other giveaway was the Klansman on the shack floor. I mean, I hadn't spotted that. I think that's just behind that seat there. A Klansman, which is one of these military radios. I then checked his QRZ page, real detective work now, and found a picture of the similar shack and noticed the carpet being the same, even though the shack had changed a bit, as the mystery picture, although there was a different shack layout. So he also thinks that it's Les G0DFC shack, and Tammy, it is?
It is Les G0DFC shack.
So well done of those of you who got that right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for entering. It's time for a new shack.
New shack.
So let's see what you think. Who works from a shack like this? Quite different. Lots of equipment there. Lots of radios, I think. Using my little knowledge of radios there. Our guest later on will be able to identify all these, I bet. Looks like a Kenwood 480 there, I reckon. That's a more modern one in the middle there.
There's a mouse on the computer. That's what I recognise.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah, bottom left. That was looks like an old Trio rig, maybe. I don't know what that orange display one is. Anyway, I'm sure you've got plenty. My guest later on, he's just shaking his head now. He'll know. Should we ask him later on? That'd be a bit unfair.
Yeah, we could do.
Martin, you might regret this. Anyway, if you know all these radios and you can put it together, who works these radios and who might own a shack like that, then drop us a line to the usual address, radio@dcpmicro.com. Drop a line to us by 3 o'clock next Wednesday, the latest please, earlier if you can, and then we'll reveal next Wednesday night whose shack that was. Now, a bit of other news for you. This Saturday, we've got a Koblenz sked, and we do have one of these every month, as you know, with our friends in Koblenz. Koblenz is twinned with Norwich, in case you don't realise that. And it's called Norfolk Day, in fact. And to celebrate 40 years of twinning, not only are we going to do a sked on the radio on 7.135 megahertz plus or minus or so at 10 a.m, but we're also going to have a unique video link-up. So this is the card that they've produced for this, and if we have a look at the next slide, but don't worry too much about remembering everything on here, there's quite a lot of information there. The main thing you need to know is that link right at the bottom of the screen there, the meet.jit.si. That's a special video conferencing link which will be active just before 10 o'clock on Saturday. It means that any of you could join in, whether or not you have aerials and radios to work on 7.135. So hopefully you'll be able to join us. Now, I'll be putting all this information on this week's newsletter, which of course will also be on the website from Friday. So look for the newsletter, look for the website, and then you'll be able to just click on that link, and that'll be a lot easier. That's this Saturday, 10 o'clock, either on radio, 7.135 megahertz, or on that video link, or both, if indeed. And one other thing, we also heard from Thorsten of Koblenz, and he says, is anybody active on the QO100 satellite at the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club? Because these people are, Marco, Winfried, Gerd and Thorsten are all active on that satellite. And if you are, and you can join them as well on that on Saturday, think about that. That would be true multimedia. Then Thorsten's email address is at the bottom of your screen there. You can drop him an email. Again, I'll be including that on the newsletter and on our website from Friday, so you can link to it there. That's it, almost for that. Now, just to tell you what else is happening next week, that was Saturday. On Monday, there's an informal net at 7:30 on GB3MB repeater. And on next week's NARC Live, Wednesday, 23rd of September, we have our very own live repair shop with Tony G4HKS. Now, what's very special about this, and we haven't done this yet before, it's just been Tammy and me working here every Wednesday night, but Tony is going to come here safely to this building. This is a COVID secure building. We're going to set up a workshop during the afternoon for him, recreating his workshop here. It allows us to install several cameras, and he'll be taking you through how he repairs various bits of equipment. He's also going to specialise in helping you with microphones. He reckons that microphones are one of those troublesome things. We buy a microphone, especially if it's a good desk mic, we keep it for lots of different radios, but there's all sorts of problems when you come to connect them to various radios. Sometimes they use a similar connector, but they're not the same pinouts. And Tony's going to take you through all the different ways that you can check a microphone and how to wire it up and everything else as well. Plus, he'll be taking you through some repairs on radios. So that's something to really look forward to. It's our own live repair shop next week, next Wednesday night, NARC Live at 7:30. So just a reminder, just send us your stories and pictures as well, please, because it does make this an entertaining programme, hopefully, for you at home. Whether you're a member of the NARC or not, we'd love to hear from you. radio@dcpmicro.com. We also have a slide on our website, and we're always happy to update this with anything happening in the Norfolk area on air. And here it is. You can see this on our website at any time. We keep it updated. If you want us to add something to that, a net, a sked, Morse training, whatever, to that, then just drop us a line and we'll be very happy to keep that up to date. And finally, if you want to know more about the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, then look at this address, www.norfolkamateurradio.org. The address is at the bottom of your screen now. And one final thing, I've mentioned this every week. Every week we send 1 or 2 cards at least. This is a card that we specially developed for the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club. It's, there we are, bring it back into frame. A Norfolk Amateur Radio Club card, which we can send to anybody you like. There's a little bit about NARC Live, there's some pictures of our events, and we'll send this to anybody who you think could be cheered up at this time, whether they're a member of NARC or not. It doesn't matter, it doesn't even have to be a radio amateur. If you just think someone would appreciate a card from the blue, maybe they're not feeling very well, difficult times, you know, feeling a bit low, and they'd like to hear from a radio club, then just drop me a note with their address and we'll be happy to send that. We must have sent 20 or so of these cards now, and we'd be very happy to send more. Just drop us a line to the usual address and we'll be happy to do it for you. Now, we're on to our main event, and I'm sure many of you watching will have seen who we're going to meet tonight. It's Martin G4HKS, better known as Martin Lynch, or Martin Lynch's Sons is his business indeed. And maybe rather than saying something for the weekend, we should say something for the Wednesday, Martin, because it's a great pleasure now to welcome Martin Lynch to NARC Live.
And a very, very good evening to you, David and Tammy, and indeed all the people watching at the radio club this evening. This is a bit different, isn't it? So first time I think I've done a radio presentation via the internet on Facebook.
Really? Okay.
So, yeah, I don't think so. You're first, so I'm very impressed. Well done. First for nailing me down.
Well, it's nice that it's lovely that you agreed to do it, because you've been in the industry quite a while, and tonight we'd like you to share with us well, certainly your travels through industry and things, but maybe we could start by just telling us how you got started in amateur radio.
I got started in amateur radio, and for people that have been to the shop over the many years, I've said this story a lot of times. I was about 13 years old, and my uncle was very much into amateur radio. He wasn't actually a radio amateur at the time. In fact, I beat him to getting my call sign. And I was 13, came home from school, and my mum said, oh, your Uncle Dixon's been, and there's a ex-Lancaster bomber receiver in your bedroom, and he's wired it all up for you. And for those of you who know what receiver used to be used in Lancaster bombers, of course, it was an R1155. And he painted it blue, the AR88D type speaker, which was a square thing about this big. He built a power supply to the back of it. I put a little length of wire outside in the back garden, stuck it in the back of the R1155, and to this day, some 51 years later, I can still remember hearing G3KDL in Wembley on top band AM speaking to G3ZHP, who ended up being one of my customers. In fact, both of them my customers many, many years later. But I can literally remember hearing that, and that's what got me hooked all those years ago. So that's what actually introduced me into amateur radio.
So that was the spark. That was the thing. It was the inspiration that just got you into that hobby.
Yeah, people still ask me now. In fact, there was a lady in the shop last week, and I said, "Oh, I've seen you on YouTube." Which is rather bizarre. I said, "Oh yes, hello," and I hadn't. But she had her mask on and all the rest of it, and said, she said she was selling some equipment to her. She said, "Well, so what do you all talk about then? I mean, if I got £1 for every time I've been asked that, I'd be very wealthy." And I said, "But what do you talk about when you go to a party? You know, you don't know everybody at the party. You talk about anything pretty well, and it's just that you've got that one thing in common." And the next thing it normally comes up, well, why on earth would you want to use amateur radio instead of using the internet? Good question, but we're radio enthusiasts. That's what it is. And after all these years, I'm still a radio enthusiast. I don't get an awful lot of pleasure communicating on the internet, or I seem to do a lot of that these days with my suppliers and customers indeed. But if you're a radio hobbyist, like being in a car club, like being in a camera club, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're from, it really doesn't matter. All those barriers are pushed aside because you've got that one thing in common. And that's why I think amateur radio survives so well today, all these years later.
So for you then, was it actually going on the radio, making new friends, making new contacts and things, and the challenges of that was the most interesting, or was it the actual technical side of it behind it?
No, well, I'm not the most technical in the world, but I enjoy building, certainly did in those days. In fact, when I finally got my apprenticeship at Rakel BCC in Wembley, and you mentioned Klansman earlier, and I tell you what, whoever spotted there was a Klansman on the floor in the fellow's shack, he's got very good eyes.
That's what I
know a
thought.
lot. Yeah, I used to service it and inspect it and see it built. I mean, Rakel BCC in Wembley was a big manufacturing plant, and we used to manufacture 349s and 351s and 350s and God knows what else there. So I was really trying to stare down and see what that thing was. For me, hobby was actually assembling electronic district amateur radio club at a very early age. My mum and dad never had a lot of money.
I don't want to interrupt your flow, Martin, but we have got a slight technical issue. Sorry, I don't know if
I was doing it when I was yeah.
I'm sorry about this. We have, as I said, Martin, I don't know if you can hear me.
Running out of bandwidth again.
This did happen actually the other night in rehearsal, and neither of us could find anything wrong with our internet connection.
We had this the other night, didn't we?
Let's hope we're not going to lose this. We've still got green lights on our...
I can hear you okay.
You can hear me. Well, let's carry on in audio then and see if we can carry on with that. Sorry, so you were saying you were repairing them and everything.
If you can hear me, that's
we can hear you now, yeah.
Yeah, I was on bench testing. I did a little bit of fault finding. I mean, working in a factory for me was like falling into a sweet shop. You can imagine being a radio amateur or a shortwave listener, as I was in those days, and going into a factory and seeing electronics being built from scratch. You know, that was very exciting for me. In fact, I don't know if you've got any video, but if I do that.
Yeah. Oh, we've got that. Is that you?
Okay. Yeah, but that's me, very hairy and very spotty when I was about 14, 15 years old. And all that kit you can see, I bought myself. My parents never, ever gave me any money, not because they were mean, they just didn't have any money.
Yeah.
And as old as that lot is, I can still rattle off an AR-88D in the corner there. A Cosa 1035 oscilloscope that they said at the radio club, whatever you do, don't open it up, you kill yourself. Well, guess what? I did. And yes, I nearly did. In fact, it threw me out of that's one of my dad's sheds, and I completely took over the shed. I've got a Creed 7BRP printing reperforator, which I'm sitting in front of.
That's I wondered if that was a teleprinter or something like that.
Yeah, teleprinter. There's 6S6M at the top, a reader, and an 85R printing reperforator. Don't ask me what I sold last week, but I can rattle off. You know, wow. I think it's something to do with the age, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same for me, mate.
It is something to do with the age. So, but yeah, so I worked very hard even in those days because I just used to earn money to tip into my hobby of amateur radio. So when Bernie and Brenda of You Know Where finally opened up in Ealing, I was obviously destined to go and poke my nose in.
And that was the Amateur Radio Exchange, wasn't it?
That was the Amateur Radio Exchange. They started off with a small shop in Ealing, in fact, in the same road that I actually opened my store in. And certainly later, a few years later, they moved to their big new shop in Acton, which was a few miles away, still in London. And Bernie and Brenda are still going, I'm pleased to say. Bernie's in his in fact, that says Bernie's 84. He was actually 93 on Saturday.
Wow. And
Brenda is still 39. Actually, Brenda might not, well, I'm going to say it anyway, she's 80. So, and so this was 9 years ago. So even at that age, they're doing very well. But
yes, didn't you recently meet them? I remember seeing it in one of your videos.
I did, yes.
Yeah, that was lovely. That was.
Yeah, that was good fun. Even during COVID, we would pass the lockdown phase then. And I sort of invited myself round, to be honest with you. And I haven't been round there for goodness knows how many years. And I said, look, you know, I'll bring the cake and that, you supply the tea. And I just want to come and talk to you to see if you'd be interested in me doing a little feature on you. Anyway, cut long story short, as you know, I eventually did end up doing that and presented Bernie with an FRG7, which he is using, I'm pleased to say, every day. Wow. In fact, I spoke to him today. I've spoken to him quite a lot recently. And Brenda insisted I didn't take the cake because she made it. And I had a lovely cake when I was around there and tea in the garden when it was about 30 odd degrees. We were melting, all three of us. But
you must have picked one of those very hot days. Yeah,
very hot days. So I joined them in 1997. So after my apprenticeship, I stayed at Rakel BCC and went into quality assurance, which I loved. And it wasn't just going around a factory barking at people how to do the job properly, because I'd worked as an apprentice in most of the departments in the factories. I enjoyed it, and the whole idea is to improve and maintain the quality. And that really helped me in my later years, to be honest with you, running my own business. But I stayed there a few years. Bernie and Brenda I'd already joined part-time in about 1977. And finally, Brenda rang me up at work and said, look, I'm fed up with this. When are you going to come and work for me? How much do you want? We had a barter about some money, and the rest is history. So I joined them in 1980 full-time.
So it's quite a journey from maintaining and seeing, and as you say, working in a factory full of these wonderful radios and things that you were so interested in, to going to selling them. I guess that was a quite a pivotal change in your life at that moment then?
It was. I mean, you know, if I got my school report out, well, actually I should have done really, because you'd all had a great laugh at it. I've never actually shown it on camera before. But actually my report, which I'm not particularly proud of, but one of the teachers, I think it was the year master, said Martin would do a lot better if he stopped selling bits to his friends in the playground. Now,
Really? Is that true? You were doing that when you were at school?
No, really, it actually says it in my school report. That was actually my junior school. That wasn't even in senior school. That was in my junior school. And little did I know that I enjoy selling.
So what were you? I'm just curious though, Martin. What were you selling at that point?
In the playground?
At that age in a junior school. So you were under 11.
I'll tell you, it wasn't radio for a start off. It was actually, and you're going to really laugh at this, one of the mad things I did. I had a friend, and again, I can remember things 50 years ago and can't remember names of 10 minutes ago. And his name was Stefanos Panahi. There you go, Stefanos Panahi. I can still just about visualize him. I think he was Greek or something. And him and me were good chums. And I decided that him and me were going to make fizzy orange, and bottle it. And sell it in the playground. I actually turned my mum's bath orange. And we bottled it all up, put labels on it, and flogged it to the kids in the playground. God knows what else I was selling, but that was one of them. My mum went
just to get this clear, you were making orange juice in the bath and then selling it at school.
Yeah, fizzing it up with lemonade and selling it in school. I mean, loads of other things. I mean, I was always flogging stuff, and it's never really stopped, you see, because from junior school I went to senior school. Obviously, I did actually attend school, and senior school. I just used that as one great big marketplace to buy and flog stuff. I mean, and indeed, when I joined, I mean, it is quite amusing when I think about it. I didn't think that it was that at the time. I mean, I knew it was great to have all these customers around me that I could sell stuff to, even though they were kids. And sure enough, when I went to Rakel, a week would never go by without something on the notice boards throughout the Rakel corridors with me flogging J chassis Philips tellies for the older fraternity who are watching this. And there were massive great things. I used to struggle. I used to work in the day at Rakel, go home in the evening, go to my friend's little shop in Acton. He's a radio amateur, incidentally. And struggle up 2-3 flights of stairs in estates around the Wembley and Kingsbury area in London, flogging tellies. And then at the weekend, I would be working for Bernie and Brenda and still doing God knows what else, selling stuff. But when I was at Rakel, I used to buy a lot of the ex-military kit that they used to sell, like the 1345Gs, which were 2 metre sets, and 40 Ls or something, of 4 metre versions. So anything that was going, I'll be buying it, because I'll be earning money flogging the tellies and putting it into amateur radio. So it was really natural that I was going to end up with my own shop one day. Yeah. And it was my wife that gave me the confidence to do it.
Can I ask you at this point though, because we've seen the way your career was taking you. You were working with technical things in a factory by day, and then the nights and weekends you were selling. A lot of people who run businesses, a lot of people who don't run businesses think that people just do it for the money. And I can say that to you because I'm a fellow businessman. I run a small business. And that people do just think that it's money, making money. But can I ask you, do you think you were doing that then to make money, or was it just because you just enjoyed the selling?
No, I mean, I'm not going to lie. And I often jokingly say, you know, come on, I'm not a charity shop. I've got to earn the money. And it's true. But what I will say, and this is absolute truth as it always has been, I can't sell anything. And people say, oh, you blooming Lynchy, he'll sell you anything. I can't. If I'm not interested in the product, and if I think, for example, you know, you could be a double glazing salesman. Well, I couldn't, because I've got no interest in double glazing in the slightest at all. If you look at my history of selling, I've had a motorbike and scooter shop. Why? Because I'm still, even in my 60s, I'm interested in motorbikes, not so much scooters, but motorcycles. Fortunately, at the time when amateur radio as a business was doing this, scooters in London were doing this. So I jumped. I kept the radio business going, thank goodness, because that's the rest of that's history. So I have to be interested in what I'm selling, and I enjoy it. And what I enjoy the most out of selling, I suppose there's a lot of key components. Certainly meeting people. I love all the fantastic breadth of different people over the years, over the tens of years. And sure enough, most of my friends are either from the amateur radio fraternity or indeed the car game, or indeed the motorcycle business now. So I have to enjoy what I'm selling. So yes, I enjoy making money. I'm not going to lie about that. I do, but I actually enjoy finding the products, finding the right products, and that isn't easy because you think it's going to be right, and then it isn't. You have to figure out how to get it right and how to market it, and there's lots. As you grow bigger and bigger, you take on more responsibility, more headaches, I guess. But fortunately, I've got my two sons now in the store, but we've moved for quite a few years. But, I'm taking a lot into these days.
Yeah, it's good. Well, it's really a great insight into you, Martin, and what makes you tick. If we can, just at this moment, actually, to remind everybody at home, though, you can ask questions of Martin. You can put them here, or whether you're watching on Facebook or whether you're watching on the British Amateur Television Club. You can just put a comment in there, a question, or we'll either ask Martin during his interview or we'll ask him right at the end. So lots of opportunity for you to ask anything, I think, to Martin. He said the other night when we met for the first time over this, you said that you were happy to do that. So please don't forget to ask Martin questions. So let's go back then. Bernie and Brenda, you just joined them early 1980s, I think you said?
Yeah, I joined them in full-time in 1980, stayed with them for 3 or 4 years. They moved from a little corner shop that I was in initially to a much, much larger premises, probably the biggest showroom in the country in the early 80s. They then, I left, I went into, I think I went back to work for Raycor because they gave me an opportunity there. I wasn't there very long before Bernie and Brenda hoiked me back again. In fact, it was mutual. I wanted to go and they wanted me back. They'd moved to Hanger Lane and they were into commercial. They weren't actually allowed to sell amateur radio. They'd sort of sold their amateur radio side off. And I joined them, but I wasn't interested in commercial. I'm still not really. The manufacturers try and push it on me, and it's a very different market. We do sell commercial. We're into the commercial markets, but there are specialists as big and bigger than I am in that market. The
Amateur Radio Exchange, though, just for those who don't remember that, as I saw, the name suggests that it was second-hand things. Really, people bought things to sell, and then they sold them on. Is that the way it was, or did they sell new as well?
I mean, yes, it was. I mean, when I first started, my shop was full up with sale and return stuff, where customers gave me gear. I think I don't mind admitting, I think I put 15,000 quid in 1990 when I myself, which was quite a lot of money. But not a lot considering the amount of kitting I had in the store. But a lot of it was, there you go, Martin, sell that for me. I want 50 quid and I sell it for 70 quid or whatever it was. So, yes, it was. Bernie and Brenda called it Amateur Radio Exchange. And again, the same principle was there, where you bought your kit along, you either traded it in for a new piece or you left it with them to sell, or they'd buy it off them outright. So I was very fortunate in joining them in my early years, whilst I was already buying and selling amateur radio from my parents' bedroom just up the road. And no, it was actually my own house. I had my own house by then. I could see how to do it right and how to do it wrong. So there's nothing.
And Bernie and Brenda didn't mind you doing that, because that would seem to be a bit of a conflict of interest.
No. When I joined them full time, that was it.
Okay.
I completely stopped, and also. As people have joined me and worked for me over many, many years, if they are buying and selling on the side, they have to stop it. If they buy something off me at pretty well buy price, yes, they can, but they're not allowed to sell it privately. Otherwise, what's the point of that? They have to sell it back to us when we sell it. So, no, you can't do that. It's just not fair to your employers, I don't think. So I worked for them. So I went back and worked for them again. I built their amateur radio business up. Again, we went right back up, even from the weeny little store we had in Hanger Lane, which is West London's car park, terrible road. They then offered me the business, but it was worth a reasonable amount of money. In fact, I've just seen a picture. Look at this. I'm going to show you me. This is rather embarrassing, seeing all these. Oh, hello, where's that gone? Sorry, I've just seen a picture of me looking very yuppie with some rather strange banana thing on the side of the phone. I know what it is. There you go. Have a look at that.
Oh, right.
That's me.
Oh,
That's
yes.
me in about, how old was I then? That's 19, I was probably about 26, 27.
I'm looking at the
You'll
computer,
notice-
Martin. There's a clue because the
yeah, well,
size of the
that's an
computer screen, that was a sort of clue.
well, that's
to
an
the
Am,
age.
that's an Amstrad.
All right,
little
yes.
computer, yeah. And that big yellow thing on the side of the handset is so I could hold the phone like this on my
Yeah.
shoulder. God, do you like the Casio watch? There you go. That's
Oh, yes.
Casio.
No, I've seen those things on the phone. I remember in America they use them quite a lot, don't they? Because I think they
Yeah,
spend
they
longer
do.
on the
Yeah,
phone.
it's
Yeah.
like a dirty, great big
Fantastic
banana.
picture.
So that was quite amusing. Yeah, so I joined them again, got it all going. They then offered me the business. I couldn't afford it, and I said to Bernie and Brenda, "Look, thank you very much for offering it to me. That's wonderful, but I really think you can get more yourself and you can get the money quickly. Whereas with me, I'd be paying it off forever." So they sold it on very, very quickly. I waited till it was sold, and I opened up the following week. Which is
right.
on their doorstep, which is a little bit naughty, I guess, but it's business. It's not like we're family.
Can you say who it became, the Amateur Radio Exchange?
It was a bit of a mishmash, really. They actually bought it as a going concern. The two brothers, unfortunately, one of them died of cancer a few years ago. They're actually called the Marx brothers, which is rather not the Groucho and the other one.
Right.
But they didn't make it go. And even more embarrassingly, and it was very embarrassing, they interviewed me for the job because they didn't know I was opening up the road, which was all a little bit strange. But that's where I'm going back into finite details now. But anyway, it all worked out. They, I think, sold it again, and Bernie and Brenda were happy because they were out of it. And yes, they've been back a few times running shows with the North London show. They did well and all the rest of it. But they're happily retired in North London. So
you didn't hurt Bernie and Brenda, who'd given you all of that help and
no, not at all. No, we
never
never competed, fortunately, which I'm very pleased that we didn't, because that would have been very difficult.
Yes.
There were a few times where they were thinking of coming back into it again, and that would have been awkward, I think is the politest way. But just to show there was no animosity. In fact, if I just bring this over here, there we go. I don't know why this isn't opening these pictures, but anyway, but Bernie sent me a very nice, or Bernie and Brenda sent me a very, very nice image, letter congratulating me on 25 years of trading out the radio business, for example.
Yeah.
But you'll notice he can't miss a quip, and he will always recall he had good teachers.
Yeah. Modesty.
Yeah, that's Bernie and Brenda all over that.
That's lovely. Well, it's nice though, isn't it? Because you clearly, by the fact that you've mentioned them so much tonight, and you know that those early starts, you know, to your career, they help shape you, don't they? And they can.
Well, they did. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw the ways of doing things, and they definitely did. And you know, I did very well for them. They did extremely well. We both looked after each other. And it's nice to be able to go back all these years. In fact, the reason I saw Bernie a few months ago was to get him on my YouTube, something for the weekend video every Friday. But also he gave me a little Sony ICF 7600 receiver and said, "There you go, lad." He said, "Sell that and give me a few bob when you've sold it." Well, this old radio was very well used. It worked, but it was very well. Anyway, long story short, I did Just Giving page on it for Alzheimer's and dementia, and raised over £1,000 for that radio, thanks to Bernie and Brenda.
Oh wow!
And so when I gave him an FRG7, I think he more than deserved that. Albeit I did do that, but I flogged his 7600, which he didn't want any money for, incidentally. So it all worked out.
Lovely.
Well.
So your shop that you started, your first shop, did that have your name above it?
Yes, it did. It had Martin Lynch, because there wasn't any sons in those days. It was Martin Lynch. And my first son came along years later, so I ended up Martin Lynch and Son, and then Martin Lynch and Sons. I had 3 radio shops. I had 3 in Ealing, and we were there for about 16 years, 17 years. The large shop I had, we turned into a motorcycle store and moved the radio out into a little shop.
Is that when you said that the amateur radio business was just taking a bit of a dive at that point?
Yeah, well, it was an understatement. I mean, in the sort of 96, 97, I went to Dayton in about 95 in America to Hamfest. And everybody was excited me going over there and seeing what would come back new products wise, and came back and I said it's going to be the end. I said, nobody's talking about frequencies anymore, and QSL cars are all giving out some email addresses and websites. Well, thank goodness I saw it, because over that 12 months to 18 months, the business went down 2/3. There were 11 of us in the London and surrounding areas, if we include Essex and God knows where else. And in a year and a half, 2 years, there was just me.
Do you mean left. 11 retailers, Martin?
11 retailers, all little ones and quite big ones. All of them went to the wall. Lowe's pulled the plug out on 3 shops, and 2 of them in London and the rest. But I saw this. I thought it was going to happen, and I dived into selling scooters, which was most bizarre, because initially you turn left for amateur radio and right for scooters in the same shop. I mean, people really thought I'd lost it. And I was worried, I must admit. That was one of the first times I've actually been worried in business. I thought, goodness me, all I really know is amateur radio. And what a shame, because it was only like 5 years after I started it. Yeah. But it saved it, really. Absolutely saved the business. And then they abolished the Morse code test and brought M3s out, more the point, the M3 call sign. And all the rest of the competition had disappeared and gone, literally pretty well, and there was just the big boys left, a few of us. I wouldn't even include myself as a big boy then, because I'd reduced the business so much. And the business literally just took off like that. That's when we moved to Chertsey, to the big store, and we haven't stopped accelerating since.
So really, that's really interesting. So the M3, that when they brought the foundation license and then into the intermediate, which and then of course the advanced, but the M3, the introductory license, that was a big turning point for the hobby.
That it wasn't just for my business. I think it saved amateur radio, because that was the other thing I was worrying about. I thought, crikey, at this rate, I'm not going to have a hobby to go to, and that worried me. Not quite as much as losing the business, but that did worry me. And I remember the RSGB telling me at the time, you do realise, Martin, that the RAE intake is over 90% down of what it was. If I said 90, that's absurd. I mean, people were just not doing it. The internet, just absolute internet communications I'm talking about, completely took it away. And I remember the year before the businesses all collapsed, and we nearly did, I had customers I dealt with for years, right back into the 70s, with Bernie and Brenda, turning up at the shop with bootloads of kit, saying, there you go, we don't need that anymore, and just giving me rows of it to sell. I mean, we had a fantastic last year before it dipped and fell through the floor. But they just went, we didn't, some of them came back over the years, but lots of them left it because they weren't what I call true radio amateurs. They weren't really, they had to have it for communication, whereas I don't. I have it for business, but I have it because I love amateur radio as a hobby.
So there was almost a fashion, and those people left that fashion, went on to something else.
Yeah, a bit like
the
CB.
internet. Yeah,
a bit like CB. I mean, we did get a lot of amateurs from the CB market. We still do, and people turn their nose up at CB, as I certainly don't, because again, it's a radio for communications. So
well, it's still, I think, Martin, certainly as far as our club's concerned, it's where a lot of people still start, even now, because it's accessible. They don't need to get a license or anything, even if it's just a simple pair of PMRs or something like that. It's the way people start, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I started with the shortwave listener side. We still, the manufacturers, you may have noticed, Trio, Kenwood, Yaesu, and ICOM have stopped making just a shortwave receiver. They're normally rolled into something else, because the shortwave listener market pretty well disappeared. Things like FRG 7700s, 8800s. I mean, I could go on for hours reeling all the numbers off, because it's not that much more money to put a transmitter with some filters in it and all the PA and all the rest of it. So it's interesting that lots of people, certainly when I was with Bernie and Brenda, came through the CB game. Very, very much. We still get it in my store now and have done, but we don't get enough youngsters, I have to say. They're still,
Yes.
It's still an older person's hobby, should I say.
So what do you think the answer is then for that? I know that you've got a training room as well at your establishment.
Well, we have. We've got,
encourage
we
people.
have. We have, yes. That unfortunately came to a grinding halt in March, of course, and still is shut. And in fact, I was only up there yesterday in there with the chief trainer, Steve, and said, look at the state of this place, because they're using it as a stores at the moment. I said, this has got to get back to the training school, because I absolutely promised myself that when we move to the big new premises that we've been in for 5 years now in Staines, we will have a dedicated trading academy, and we actually train trainers in there as well. And every week, I love just flitting in and seeing them all up there. It's all air conditioned. I've got big screens up there. It's really nice.
No, it does look good. What do you think then is the secret, especially because we have a similar passion, I must tell you, at Norfolk Amateur Radio Club. We really have a passion for young people to get into this hobby and give them a taste. We have a thing called Bright Sparks once a month, which encourages youngsters under 18 to come in. We take things apart, not necessarily amateur radio, but just take things apart, show them how it works, the sort of thing they don't really have time now in the curriculum at schools to do. We're trying to get them interested in it, and hopefully that some of them will be going on to, and they have gone on to amateur radio, but it's still only a few compared to the numbers of people who even return to the hobby later on. So what do you think the best thing that we could do now?
Well, I mean, we've been scratching our head forever, haven't we? I mean, the RSG have tried all sorts of angles. I used to have a guy, Carlos, I think Carlo was his name, used to wander around with the big wagon that the RSGB had parking up in kids'
GB for fun.
Parks. Yeah, that's the one, and showing it off. I'm not sure that worked very well, but at least it was out there promoting it. I remember when I was at Ealing District Amateur Radio Society at 13, there was me and another chap, Nigel, and we were the youngest. And the closest age to us, I think, was in the late 20s, then it's 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And I think it's still pretty well like that now. Looking at the people that are coming into the store, whilst majority are my age and slightly younger and older, there are 40-year-olds, that sort of age group, that are interested. And certainly when we get youngsters in, we trip over ourselves, especially me, I've got more time than the others, encouraging youngsters to get into the hobby and showing them. But it's normally a spin-off from their father. It's very rare I get a kid in the shop that their mum and dad haven't got a clue. I have had, actually, in saying that, I've thought just in the last year or two, I've had a few in the store where they've led the parents in. And I really try and encourage them, because we need youth coming into the hobby. Wouldn't it be terrible if the hobby dies because there isn't the influx of people coming into it?
Yes, and we're talking about 10, 20, 30 years ahead, aren't we? That's the real worrying time, when the youngsters of today become the adults, they've had their families, and then they look to a hobby to return to.
Well, you look at the numbers, the RSGB, the numbers are up, I understand, quite a lot. So it does seem to be...
I was going to mention, I mean, we're recording this not recording, we're live indeed, but people will watch this, I'm sure, for many months and years to come. And we're recording this, do this interview in September 2020, just as we're coming out of a summer with COVID. Looks like we're going to be maybe going back into some kind of lockdown at least, or at least restrictions in the winter months. Yeah. But in that time, the business that Tammy and I run, which is an indoor hobby, Model Railways, we've seen that surge. And have you seen a surge for amateur radio because it's an indoor hobby?
Yes, absolutely. I think anybody in amateur radio that isn't busy at the moment is probably asleep. So I know I think there's a few competitors out there, tongue in cheek. I do say that tongue in cheek. No, we're all busy, I'm pleased to say. Whilst we're all trying to kill each other, we are reasonably friendly towards each other. It's competition, it's healthy. I've been at rallies where I've been the only trader. Doesn't work. You do need a few more, certainly in the bigger rallies, and this ditto with retail. It's good to have competition. We all have different ideas. It's a bit monotonous when people copy all the time. Although Victor Brand, who may be one of your members,
he is actually. I'll tell you why, Martin. He sent me an email not only a couple of hours ago, just said, can you send me a link for tonight's programme? So I'm sure
there you go. Well,
this now.
good evening, Victor and Audrey, if you're watching.
I'm sure they are.
I've known Victor since I was knee high to a grasshopper. He's not quite as long as that, but Victor, I still ring him up and say, Victor, do you think blah blah? And he scratches his head and gives me some ideas. I love him to bits. He and I go back a long way in the early 90s. When he was, amongst other things, looking after the RSGB's advertising and marketing. I never forget, Victor is the only person that actually refused to print one of my adverts because I was always slightly odd advertising. And I sent him a picture of a turkey. It was a caricature of a turkey running down the road with a radio. I can't remember what the radio was actually underneath its arm, and the turkey was looking around saying, "Give Lynch a ring if you want to talk turkey." And Victor was mortified at this. He said it wasn't to the standard that the RSGB. I mean, you can laugh now when you look at the rubbish that's printed, not in Raycom, but the rubbish that's printed in other magazines for other things. I mean, it's hilarious.
Yes.
But he was really serious, and I thought, well, no, Victor's man. He knows what he's. I said, oh, come on, Vic. No, I'm not going to print it. Look, no. So 10 out of 10 for that. I went off and thought of something else, but it was, there was a classic line. I have to tell you very quickly this. Low Electronics opened, obviously they were a competitor, even though I used to buy off them in the very early days. I used to buy my Kenwood off them. Low Electronics put an advert in Raycom in the first few months of me opening, and it said, Low Electronics have landed at Heathrow, because they'd opened a small shop in Heathrow. And my next advert said, whilst others are landing, we've taken off. I mean, I can't. It's just funny. It was tongue in cheek, and there was no nastiness band.
No, it's a play on words, I guess.
Yeah, it was just amusing. So but Victor's the only person to this day that's refused to print one of my adverts, and good on him. I love him for doing it.
Well, as you probably know, one of our members is Chris Danby, who handles the advertising for Radcom now. Now, has he ever refused to print one of your ads?
No, he's told me to change some lines where either I've worded it wrong or it could be construed to it. Chris is very, very good. He's very professional, and he does work very hard. We do have a laugh on the telephone. But he'd say, come on, Martin, you do this, or why is your advertising late? And, it's always lastminute.com for me, although now I'm sort of more semi-retired. I do have a bit more time, and I've got alarms going off on my calendars telling me, do this, got to do this, got to do that. And sometimes I'm actually early, which is totally unheard of. Ask Chris. But I've always left it to the last minute because I look upon it as a news. The later you are, the more up to date.
More current, yeah.
I don't want to give away too many of my trade secrets, but I think everybody knows it now. We'll do the same thing. But no, Chris is one of your members, and what an enthusiast. You see, there's another person who's involved commercially in amateur radio for the RSGB and other things, but a real radio amateur. So that's it's good, isn't it? And so indeed, so is Victor now, and he was back in the early 90s.
So now you're semi-retired. Do you have a bit more time for amateur radio to return?
I do because yes, very soon I will have. My area that I have for my shack is actually being decorated and modified and moved around. And because I have got more time, you may well find me on the wireless more, because I was mad on 160 meters, 4 meters, 2 meters. And I'd like to get back to it again. The only slight problem I have is that when I go on, I get it's lovely, don't get me wrong, but I do get lots of people calling me up saying, hello, Martin, do you remember that FT101 you sold me in 1978? I've got a problem with that and all this sort of thing. And obviously, I'm hardly going to say, no, go away, I'm not going to talk to you, because I love my customers, and a lot of them I know anyway. But it does get a bit out of hand. And somebody said, well, why don't you use your G8 call sign? I suppose I could do. But it's quite fun. Yes, I think you will see me back in it more. When I'm more retired now, my two sons. My eldest son Daniel is running the place, basically, more than basically, he's running the place. We've got 18 staff. We've just got another engineer in, so we've now got 5 engineers, would you believe, on site, which I don't think many people. I had 4, but let alone 5. I think it's the quality side of me. You've got to give the backup and support. It's no good flogging it, not being able to back it up. So the engineers are very important. And we're still looking for one more salesperson. So I keep mentioning it. We've taken one more on, but we need another one. So in answer to your question that you gave me about 10 minutes ago, we've gone big round circle. Yes, we're busy.
Yeah.
I'm very pleased to say that people are using the hobby even more now, which is good for business, but it's actually really good for the hobby. You go on 2 meter, call CQ on 1443 and get a call back, which you couldn't do a while ago. So I think it's brilliant. Absolutely wonderful.
I mean, the RSGB, I believe, in their peak now are doing something like 600 M7s, you know, the foundation every month, online invigilation.
So there you go. So they're coming to the hobby.
Yes.
That'll be good, isn't it?
And it's got to look after. So we're right up to date, 2020. What do you think about the equipment and things that you're selling now? It's so sophisticated, isn't it? It's, I mean, what's your view as a radio amateur and also as someone who sells these professionally?
Well, some of it, I must admit, is slightly beyond me. You may have noticed that there are more youngsters working for me. I like the old ones because I can identify with people nearer my age. But I have got youngsters who are bright and they comprehend all the strange things that you can do with some of the kit these days. But the core of amateur radio is still HF, VHF, UHF. You know, everybody's waiting for the IC 705. I do believe they've landed. So hopefully we'll be seeing those trickling through, all the people that are waiting for those. I mean, amateur radio has always had different threads and branches going off, and you can make it as involved and as complex as you like. You don't people do get a bit worried, and I hear, and I have had older customers ring and say, look, Martin, I want to do this, I want to do that. I've heard people doing this. Say, like, okay, because I've had such a long relationship with that customer, if I know that he's not particularly good on this, I'm not going to just flog it to him to take his money for several reasons. First of all, I want him to come back. If he's bought it and he has it 3-4 months and he's going around in circles, he'd just put it in the corner or sell it back to me or whatever. It's better. I'm not in it for short term. I think anybody who's flogging kit for short term gain is a bit of an idiot, to be frank. And I've proved that I'm not, because I'm still flogging it 40 odd years later. It is complicated. It's complicated to fix. And I think lots of customers think, and I'll make this very clear, that we're all sent off to the factories and trained. I can assure you we're not. We do get training so far as email training. There's no video training. My guys have to learn on the actual equipment. And because we're a Yaesu factory dealer and distributor, when we're the only dealer in the UK that actually deals direct with the factory, everybody else deals with Yaesu UK or with me, we sell it to them. So we have got an open form straight back to the factory's engineers. Kenwood is the same. We're the only Kenwood dealer in the UK and distributor now in the UK. So that gives us a slight advantage, or quite a big advantage. But my guys still have to learn it. There's no manuals on how to do this and do that. We'll get sheets of paper telling us how to do things after you badger them, and finally they agree there is a fault, if there is a fault. So we have to be, our workshop has to be up to date, and I have to get the technical capability in the workshop to repair it, let alone demonstrate it, but actually repair the stuff when it goes wrong.
Are you licensed, as it were, to repair things under guarantee as well for manufacturers?
Yes, we are. Right. In fact, even the other dealers send me stuff to repair under warranty. So Yaesu and Kenwood get sent to us. Certainly Kenwood does. You have to send it to me. But Yaesu, if Yaesu workshops are busy, we repair it under warranty. So yes, we are. Icon, we are obviously licensed to, or approved, should we say, with Icon, but Icon do their own repairs as well.
So a friend of mine, about a week ago when I said that you were coming on the show, just asked me to ask you something about pricing. It seems that every bit of major equipment that's sold is an identical price between every dealer. I mean, is that, so just because I know you're going to be straight with this, Martin. Is that
No,
is that
I'm
a
gonna be
pricing policy, or is it an agreement between everybody, or what?
No, well, first of all, it's illegal to price fix. They outlawed that many years ago. Now, I always think there's two sides to that coin, because what it also promotes is bedroom and backroom boy sellers with no support or product knowledge or any interest in giving you any service. Once it's out there and they've flogged it to you. Amateur radio, fortunately, is complicated. It does need support. And you can say, well, it doesn't matter if it goes wrong. I can send it back to Yaesu UK or ICOM or any, not just choosing them, any of the manufacturers. You can, but it'll take longer for you to get your kit back because they've got lots to repair. So there is a minimum margin that will work to, where I know I can pay my bills and support the product, pay my staff. So that's why when people ring us up and say, oh, come on, so-and-so's doing it for that price. Well, have a look at it. I love a deal. You know, I don't go and negotiate over a bottle of milk, but I'll probably negotiate over a bottle of a tube of Bostik. No, I'm not that bad. I don't mind doing a deal. And I love people ringing me up and saying, look, can you do it? And if we can, they know I want them to do it, you know, especially if there's a trade-in or something. But like the IC705 that's coming out, everybody's selling that for $1,299.95p or $99.99, whatever it is, because it's a brand new product. I think we're giving away a hat and a blooming cup or something with it. It's a brand new product. We don't know whether there's going to be problems with it. I doubt it. ICOM normally get it right first time, but why give it away initially? So if you don't want a slightly discounted price, wait, because no doubt in a year or 2 years' time it will be down in price. Years ago, all the dealers used to get a fixed margin, and then they get an extra discounted margin on top, and it was an incentive. Over the years, and I keep saying this, amateur radio prices are so low. I'm not going to say cheap, because there'll be somebody saying, yeah, they're not cheap, are so low. You look at the price of a FT450 100 watt HF with ATU and FM and general coverage receiver at 650 quid. I was selling handhelds with Bernie and Brenda in the 80s for 550 quid. Really? I mean, that shack you showed had oh
yes, I was going to ask you about that, wasn't I?
Yeah, I think it was an IC set. It was either an IC.
I'm going to put Tammy on the spot now. Sorry, Martin. I'm going to put Tammy on the spot. We're going to try and bring it back on the screen now. There we go.
Yeah, got it. Right. Okay, right. The one at the top with the blue lens underneath the yellow duster is obviously, I didn't want to show that piece off. It's probably a 15 kilowatt linear, is it?
I don't know. And we can't give any clues because we're not supposed to know who does
So
this.
Underneath there is an FT7.
Right.
Okay. Those things were £400-500 in about 1979, 1980. They were a lot of money. So you look at that, and then you look at the price of a radio that would annihilate the performance of that now, and it's the same price or 50 quid more. So whilst it looks like all the prices are fixed, they're not. We've had all our discounts stripped back a lot, and we're selling at a percentage that we can survive on. And I mean, and I can have the occasional hot meal. The rig in the bottom left-hand corner, I think is an IC751, or it might be that one there with the microphone, the lesson microphone to the left-hand. So the one to the right, it's either a 751 or an IC740. I think it's a 751, I think.
You know what? For those of you watching at home, Martin is helping you solve whose shack this is. The only one I recognise, that one in the middle was the 480. Yeah, that's the only one I recognise.
See the TS480, and there's a Toyo, I think a Toyo on the far right-hand corner.
Wow.
The Twin S. Yeah, I love looking at.
That's someone who knows his radios.
Yeah, I love them.
So so if someone's buying something now, if the price is the same from most of them, and you've got about 3 or 4 main competitors, would it be fair to say? So you're suggesting really people buy it on service. Think about after-sales service.
Well, I again, quoting Low Electronics, he loved quoting Latin because he was far better educated than me. But something in Latin, it said, the sweet taste of discount is long forgotten when the service is required. I don't know what it was. I tell you now, Victor will remember.
Right.
Victor Brand. And he is right. I mean, I'm not scaremongering. It's true. You could say, well, it's not going to go wrong. I tell you now, everything goes wrong, and it doesn't matter how expensive it is. It can go wrong. And that, people say, oh, I've always dealt with so-and-so. I've never had any trouble. Have you ever had to take anything back? No, never. Well, you don't know. You've got to take it back. That's when it can get. And unfortunately, and I think I just won't say this just for myself, but I know all the dealers have been in the same boat. The COVID thing has made it very difficult for us because A, we couldn't get all our engineers in. B, we had to leave the kit for 4 days and then clean it all before we test it. Then we have to clean it all before we ship it back. That has delayed things. Now, I'm very proud to turn stuff around very quickly. It's doubled it. And others are in the same boat. They all say the same to me. So
and I guess you've been extra busy because people have been at home more and using their radios more.
They're buying kit. Yeah, and it's go on the internet, press the button and buy it, and they get it the following day. Except when COVID kicked off, and we'd send some plugs out to people. You'd normally get it in 2 days, 3 days, and they get it in 2 weeks' time. And the abuse we got over that. But I think it was 370 people in the sorting office in London. Stayed at home, and all our stuff, when it's all finished now, thank God that's all behind us, but it caused a lot of aggro in the first 2.5 months of COVID.
But things are but generally now the hobby and sales and everything in a pretty good place with equipment.
Right.
And,
yeah, they have. Yeah, it wasn't a problem with sales. It was just getting the stuff out and getting it delivered. That's what the problem was.
Yes. I remember ordering some coax from you from the Italian company.
M&P.
And I think it might have been Dan actually I spoke to because it wasn't in stock, and I needed a couple of reels, the Ultra 7 and Ultra 10.
Yeah.
And I remember Dan saying to me, I hope he didn't speak out of turn, but he said to me, you'd sold more coax in the last 3 months, I think, than the previous year. Is that right?
Correct. And we still are. Yeah. We still are. M&P really has pretty well, if not pushed everybody aside. We're so lucky to get that cable. And that was by going to Friedrichshafen and talking to the chap and Francesca, I can't remember her name now. Anyway, the people there. And we saw them a couple of years on the trot, and they turned up one day in the store, and then we invited them to our open day, and the rest is history. So we get through miles of it. But there was a good 4 to 6 weeks gap because, of course, they had to close their factory down.
Yes.
So they weren't even making anything. This was in Italy. I mean, God, they were hit terribly to start off with.
Yeah. So how did you, and maybe Dan now, how do you select the equipment? I mean, all right, the Icon, the Asus, the Kenwoods, they're going to be straightforward to choose the selection. But what about the other niche equipment, the things like the M&P cable and things? How do you find those? Is it going to Friedrichshafen or Tokyo? Or?
Okay, yes, I do go to Japan. But one of the, whilst I am semi-retired, what I've always done is look for new products. All my guys do, actually. Gary Spires, who you've seen maybe on my YouTube, he's my customer support guy. We've got a dedicated customer support engineer. All Gary does is sit there all day sorting customer problems out. But when he's not doing it, usually at home, he's looking for new products for me. I do constantly. I mean, when I first started, it was very difficult to get supplies of anything. As you get better known, you find people knock on your door and say, hello, would you like to sell this for me? I make this. Or indeed, I'll contact a new manufacturer like these MAT tuners that you've seen me advertising recently. And they designed a tuner for the new IC705, and they turned it around and did it just like that. I mean, they're must of that company. And so I emailed him and said, look, I'd like to do business with you. I hope you've heard of us, blah, blah, blah. And he kept saying, oh, my goodness, which is great. That's so different to 10, 15 years ago. So it does get easier. I mean, there's so many brands we do. It is endless. Hardly a month goes by without picking up a couple of new products or new not just new products, new manufacturers.
Yeah, it's wonderful to know.
It's good fun.
We're coming towards the end now, but we have a few questions for you. And also, this is another opportunity to ask you at home now, if you've been waiting and enjoying everything Mark has been saying about his life story in this hobby, it's now a great time to ask your question, because we've got a few questions there, but we're coming to the end of the show now. So let's start off with, now this is not a radio question. This is from Steve G4HKS. What is Martin's favourite motorcycle?
Crikey. Oh my God, what was my favourite motorcycle? I've had lots and lots of motorcycles. Favourite one. People always say the one you've got now. In my garage, I've got a BMW R1200R, which is my fun machine. And I've got, would you believe, a little Honda Cub. Now, for those people that spend 10 minutes, 20 minutes watching my Something for the Weekend video, they saw me on my little Honda Cub about 2 months ago. I bought it. My wife Jennifer said, "What on earth have you bought that for?" My son Daniel, who worked in the motorcycle industry, by the way, when he left university, he didn't want to come into amateur radio. My eldest Dan, he went into the bike game, and I grabbed him back and said, "Come on, you want to sell bikes, come and work with us." And I showed him the Honda Cub, and he said, "You're nuts." I said, "Look, I remember one of those when I was in the 70s, sold it to another, swapped it for some radio gear with G4HKS, who went out of my parents, this is true, he went out of my parents' driveway. He'd never ridden a step through before. And for those who've ridden a Honda Cub, they know what a step through is. He's a big, burly chap. He shot out of my parents' driveway across the main road that my parents lived in, hit the curb the other side, and ended up in the hedge opposite my parents' house with the whole bike stuck in it, laughing his head off.
I bet.
Anyway, so 40 years later, Honda decided to bring the new version out for 2019, and I had to have one. And in fact, they're bringing an electric one out in 2 or 3 years' time. I did tell Jenny the other day, I tell you now, I'm going to be actually, what on earth, you know? So my favourite ones are the ones I've got. I've had lots of bikes. I don't miss. I've had 2-stroke. I like big. Oh, there is one actually. No, I'll answer it. The GT 750 Kettle water-cooled 2-stroke. There you go. I sold it in 1993. And I wish I never did.
Oh.
So G750 Suzuki.
All right. Okay.
Just remember that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Another question from John, 2E0TWQ, says, "Is Martin finally doing flex radio repairs at Staines?"
Oh, well, all I can say is please write to Flex. I've been telling Flex for years, we are, you know, if there's little chaps in Germany that can fix it, I've got little English, Bulgarian, Hungarian. I've got Bulgarian, Hungarian, and several English people that can fix it as well. But they just, I don't know, they've got some contract that they're letting us do little things, but not letting us do enough. So not yet. I'm sorry,
Okay.
but not yet.
I know we have a lot of flex users in our club, actually.
But
so.
we're the sole Flex distributor, by the way. There's
Right.
nobody else doing Flex. We're the only. Well, they've given it. They took it away from others, and they've just given it to us now.
Okay, well, all right. So if you'd like Martin Lynch to repair them, literally write a note to
Yeah,
Flex
we'll handle it for you. We'll handle it. We'll liaise with the factory. We'll liaise with Germany. We'll send it off you so you don't have to mouse. So we'll do it all for you. We're happy to do that. But it being very truthful, we're not allowed to go to component level on the boards.
Okay.
Same with SPE, with the amplifiers. We can fault find and tell them what we think's wrong, but we still have to send it back to SPE in Italy, which is a pain, in Rome, which is his house, is his factory, to get it repaired. It's nuts because my guys are more than capable of repairing amplifiers.
All right, let's hope they change their mind. Got a note actually from someone who couldn't be with us watching. He's going to watch the recording of this. Alan, G800, he says he knows you well. One thing I'd be interested in is, when did Martin open his first shop? Well, you've answered that, I think, in the 1980, wasn't it?
1990. Well, no, my own shop. Am I going to admit this? Okay, I will. It was yesterday, 30 years ago.
Oh, Martin.
Yeah, so yesterday was my birthday, and I'm not going to celebrate it, which is very sad because this year we had the biggest shindig ever planned for my 30th birthday, especially as I'm sort of semi-retired now. And I've had to throw the whole lot out the window. So, in fact, Radcom were going to have a big hoo-ha. I said, no, only yesterday I reminded them, don't put anything in it. I'll admit it to, because there's obviously only you and me having a chat and a few of your guys at the radio club.
Yeah.
Just a few of us, yeah. So it'll suddenly appear next year, and it'll be the 31st or 32nd or whenever it will be, but it's for my 30th. So
all right,
yeah, it was actually yesterday, 30 years ago.
Massive congratulations for the 15th of September, yesterday then, for your 30th birthday, Martin. This is from Alan anyway. He's asked that. The reason for wanting to know this is I used to buy my equipment off Martin before he opened his first shop, and myself and many other guys would call it his home to collect the goods from his front door. And from memory, my first purchase was an FT290 radio, which I scrapped earlier this year. So it's not done badly, has it?
Well, again, that was my second house I owned in Ealing, which was next to my mum and dad's. I actually bought a house next to my mum and dad, and because people couldn't figure out how's this radio amateur got aerials over 2 houses, over 3 chimney pots. Wow. Simple. My mum and dad lived next door. God bless them, they're both up in the sky now, and but they saw me open my shops, which is good.
Yes.
My first and second shop, actually. Yes, they did used to collect stuff from my front door, and indeed my front room, which was one of my bedrooms, it was turned into a workshop and a little sales area. I haven't got my invoice books here, but they're still at the shop. Maybe I should have bought them along.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, I have still got them all.
I think the warranty would have expired on that 290.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably.
Got Peter Bishop's asked a question here. I'm not sure you'll know this off the top of your head, but you know most things here. So, can you get me ear pads for Kenwood HS5 headset, please?
My goodness me. I think the answer is probably yes. HS5.
I'll put you two in touch, actually.
Yeah, no, that's all right. HS5 ear pads, because we do them for the Heil, of course. And I think they are available as a spare. If he just drops workshop at hamradio.co.uk, Steve will come back to him with the availability and a price. That's workshop at hamradio.co.uk.
Okay, that Peter's watching actually on Facebook, so I don't have his email address anyway, so that hopefully he's watched that and he can help you. Another question now on BATC from Tony M0TDK. I'm an Elecraft fan. Any chance you might sell them?
Again, that's one of the doors I've been knocking on, and write to Eric and tell him you want to buy it from your favourite ham store. That's all I can say. And the more people that keep doing it, eventually he will relent and allow me to sell it. So that's all I can really say on that at the moment.
All right, Martin, fine. And but one other comment, I don't know if this means anything to you. I know this is from Mark G4HKS, and he's just put crunchy. Does that mean anything to you?
Just put crunchy.
It does, yeah, I thought it might be some code word or something. By the way, he's our treasurer, so he may be worried that you're going to charge a fee for this.
Oh, dear, oh, Lord.
Does that mean anything? I don't know, honestly, that's all he's written.
I'm ever so sorry. No, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Is it to do with the motorbikes, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Is it? Oh, yes, he did say that. He did write that when you were talking motorbikes, but no.
No. Oh, look at this, by the way. And I'm changing the subject. That's my first little shop. There you go.
Oh, yes. That was the first one. Yeah.
Oh, hello. Where's that gone? Sorry, that's the first shop.
Right.
That's the little corner shop, and there's my Shogun there, the Mitsubishi Shogun. But
so
if you look underneath, Martin Lynch, it says the Electronic Hobbies Exchange Centre. Yeah. Slight play of words there.
So that's the shop that you opened as soon as Bernie and Brenda sold their business.
Yeah. Those, God dear me, I've just found all the photos. Shame I should have done them.
I've got an answer for you, by the way, on the motorbikes, on what the crunchy meant. Apparently, it stands for a Honda Cub.
Oh, is it? I didn't know that.
Apparently, yeah. Someone else actually came and said, I've got a Honda C70, that's a crunchy. Someone else has said that as well.
It's probably because of the gearbox, because when you change gear, if you don't dethrottle, it goes crunch. Well, there you go. I didn't know. So thank you for telling me that.
Yeah, and someone else has come on and said crunch is an old type gearbox on a motorcycle. There you go.
Yeah, it's a step through. That's why I mentioned the step through earlier. Yeah. Amazing little thing.
Finally, Martin, just a little explore before we say goodbye, and I know thank you for all your time tonight. Norfolk, you have a connection, which I didn't know until we did this tech rehearsal a few nights ago.
I do. My lovely wife, Jennifer, is from Norfolk. She's from a little village called Boughton, which is near Stoke Ferry, in Norfolk, south of King's Lynn. And I met Jennifer... God, we were talking about this earlier. I met Jennifer nearly 50 years ago. So there you go. And we got married 26 years ago, known each other for a long, long time. She's lived down our neck of the woods for a long time, so she hasn't got a twang, unfortunately, because I love the Norfolk accent. But give her only a minute or two round her Norfolkian friends, and she's speaking with as much a Norfolkian accent as Mr. Danby does. So, yes, that's a Norfolk connection, and very proud she is too. Why not? We love going up there, absolutely love it.
Well, that's wonderful. Martin, thank you ever so much for sharing everything you have with us tonight, being very candid and sharing us with you, with your whole journey from Racal when you started in radio. Yeah. Well, even earlier than that, actually, selling orange and lemonade from your mum's bath in the. No, I think it's a lovely part of the story.
It's so embarrassing.
No, it's not. It's great. I won't bore you with some of the ways I started, but it's a similar sort of thing in many ways. I worked for Pye, by the way. The Pye in Cambridge, and I remember similar things, and people used to get the radios meant for police and things like that. They used to get them home, the amateurs, and fiddle with them and change the frequencies and all that sort of thing. So probably similar sort of thing.
I mean, it's, I've got actually up there some kit that I built myself. It was so much fun. And it is still in me, and I'm hoping having more time. I've got 2 lovely grandchildren now, thanks to my eldest son, Daniel, whose wife produced 2. I've got a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy. And I do spend a lot more time with them now, but now they're at school, so we've got a bit more time. So maybe now's the time to get the old radio going again. Lovely.
And that's a great way to finish. Martin Lynch G4HKS. We hope to hear you on the airwaves more, but once again, thank you ever so much for joining us tonight on NARC Live.
You're very welcome, and very good luck to both of you and Tammy. Thank you for your time and indeed inviting me. Best wishes and 73 and 88s to any ladies in Norfolk watching tonight, and thank you for all your support. All my guys said that to me today. Don't forget to thank them for everybody. I don't need to be reminded. Without the support from my customers, I wouldn't have the business at all. So thank you very, very much, and look forward to seeing you all on Friday. I'll have to think of what to do for tomorrow now, won't I? And get it out on Friday. All the best to you.
Thank you very much. Good night, Martin.
Good night.
And that was Martin Lynch. And that ends virtually tonight's programme on NARC Live. Just to remind you again that this Saturday we've got our special Koblenz sked, both on the radio on 7.135 megahertz. Didn't I say that? Maybe I didn't say that earlier. That's for John.
I think actually the slide that we put on said kilohertz.
Oh, did it?
I believe it did, yeah.
Oh,
which is why there was a little bit confusion.
I was going to say that'd be very low frequency to be working Germany. I don't think we do that. So 7.135 megahertz, and also don't forget that special video link as well, which we'll put on the website and on our newsletter this weekend. Monday we've got the informal net at 7:30 on DB3B, and next week on NARC Live, of course, we've got Tony G0MQG with his repair shop that we're going to do live here. So start thinking of your questions and things that you would like to know how to fix. We're not, of course, in competition with Martin, though, but the sort of thing that you might be able to do, and we'll learn a lot from Tony, I know, next week. So that's looking forward to that. If you've got anything for the show, drop us an email to this address, radio@dcpmicro.com. It's been a lovely evening. Great to hear a great story. And we thank you very much for joining us. Don't forget, if you want to us to send one of these cards to anybody that you know who's going to cheer them up, just drop us an email to that address with a name and address, and we will be happy to send it to them. But for now, from Tammy and M02C, goodbye.
Goodbye.
And from me, thank you ever so much for joining us. Get on the air to care. Take care. Bye-bye.